It's important. But we're going to go to Medical Monday.
Yeah.
So that we can get through this next week. All right. Did you guys even know? So here, check out this heart. I love this so much. So we know that a normal heart valve, wherever it is, whether you're talking aortic valve, mitral valve, pulmonary, or a tricuspid, they typically have 3 leaflets. That's a tricuspid valve. You have 3 leaflets. And there are actually individuals who have 1 leaflet, which is a unicuspid, 2 leaflets, which we've heard of, which is bicuspid, or even 4 leaflets, which is quadricuspid. I can't even imagine that. And I don't think it really looks like 4 separate distinct tissues, although it may. It's still just, I mean, here it is. Here's a unicuspid. It just has like the 1 hole, whereas a bi has 2 distinct areas, 2 distinct tissue areas, and we're supposed to have 3. So we do know that bicuspid, which is more commonly seen in the aortic valve, can cause issues. So let's talk about this a little bit. So as mentioned in the Mayo Clinic's article on bicuspid valves, a bicuspid valve it's a type of heart disease that you're born with. So that would make it a congenital heart disease. You would fall into the congenital heart disease groups. And usually the aortic valve has 3 cusps, which we talked about, 3 cusps. A bicuspid valve only has 2. And you don't know that you have it until you find it like by accident because you have an echo or you have a scan. And all of a sudden someone's like, oh, did you know that you had a bicuspid valve? And they're not sure yet of its hereditary nature, which is why a research study is being done right now by Dr. Siddharth Prakash. You've heard his name. He does the exercise studies. He's doing that right now in UT Houston. But rarely, some people are born with an aortic valve that has, as I just mentioned, 1 cusp, which is a unicuspid, or 4 cusps, quadricuspid. And changes to this aortic valve can actually cause health problems. So sometimes by having anything other than 3 cusps, it could cause narrowing of the aortic valve, which is called aortic valve stenosis. The valve it doesn't actually open fully, and blood flow from the heart to the rest of the body becomes reduced or becomes blocked. There's also backward flow of blood, which is called aortic valve regurgitation. And that is usually because it's not closing tight. So when your valve doesn't close tightly, it allows blood to seep back through and regurgitate. Sounds really gross, but it's like you would envision when you think of like GERD or gastric reflux, same thing. So this causes the blood to flow backward. That's not a good thing either. And it can cause an enlarged aorta.
Karen,
you with me, Josh?
Karen, your mic just died. She's a pro. Let's see how quick.
An enlarged aorta called aortopathy. An enlarged aorta increases the risk of a tear of the lining of the aorta, hence we all know an aortic dissection. So again, having bicuspid valve typically leads to aortic aneurysms. We know this. And again, if you don't know that you have a bicuspid valve, you won't know that you possibly have an aneurysm, which means surprise if the day comes when you have that rare dissection. So finding out that you have a bicuspid valve or quadricuspid or whatever the case may be, anything other than a tricuspid, there's usually going to be a lot of monitoring afterwards, a lot of follow-up tests. And this is one of those situations where you really hope you can schedule to have any surgeries that you might need, any surgical interventions moving forward. And just because you have a bicuspid doesn't mean you're going to have an aortic aneurysm. It doesn't even mean that you need to have your valve repaired instantly the day you find out. You're just going to be monitored. So good information. Can't present this to a child, but it's important to explain that if the parent ends up having some type of surgery because of this, what does that mean as far as recovery? I'd much rather have known ahead of time that I had an issue than to have found out the way that we found out, Diane and I, through a dissection. But this tells you a little bit more about aortic valves. I know I learned something new. I had no clue that you could have 1 cusp or 4. I mean, that sounds crazy to me.